Ah, all right. So for this class, we're gonna focus on error handling, and error handling is basically a process or a situation where we tend to handle or tend to prevent our application from breaking. Because truth is that in most cases, your application may actually tend to break, and if it does break, okay, then you're not that your entire application will end, but then that specific route will not function. That specific route will not function. So we're gonna see how you can handle situations where we can divert these problems, right? And send back an appropriate message in a case where there is this kind of situations. So that's what we mean by handling errors in fast API. Probably, or we also say handling situations where our application uh, will not function anymore. Okay, will not function anymore. And the concept is still is familiar or is similar to our try and accept that we did back then when we were working with basic of Python. So it's almost the same concept, right? It's almost the same concept, except that this time around we'll be sending out response and HTTP response. In that case, in this matter, HTTP response and not a usual print statement or a usual return statement. So I will give us a typical example, okay? A typical example of how we could do that. Now I'm bringing this example from the task that we did in our previous task, right? So I saw some situations where our application will likely break, right? And but no, I subtracted mark, right? So for those of us that are having about 90, 95, 80, just know that you're among this category of people, right? So there is somewhere in your program that that needed this kind of handling, but we did not actually perform that handling well. For that, we remove small mark, five marks, 10 to, and the rest of them. Okay, so let's put a simple route. So I'll copy this route that I have up here, okay, and I will call this route. I'll call this route division route, correct? A route that handles division. And then I also want this route to take in two parameters, two parameters. So how do we put in parameters? I'll call this division because we already have this route here, so there's no point of putting this route down here because that will do what that will cause a situation where this will always do what execute, and this other one won't do what execute. So you have to do what change that route. So I'll call this route division route. And then I also expect that you provide two path parameters. And the parameters, I'll call it A and B, A and B, right? A and B, A and B. And then basically I want this A and B to be integers, right? Integers. So I could come to my route handler and then specifically say that I need A to be an integer. A being what? A being our one of our path parameter, and I also want B to be integer. So we looked at this variations, basic variations, back then in our previous classes. So that shouldn't come as a surprise. So this is more like a basic variation here, saying that A and B must be integers, and then I also want to do a carry out a division where I would say result should be equals to A divided by B, right? And then at the end of it all, I want to do what send back the result, send back the result, and then finally the results here would be result. So this would be my F string result. Okay, and that is that. And that is that. So if I'll run our development server and and then I'll do what we get to test this particular route. And so we use UVCon main, and then app dash dash reload. Right, so our server is up and running. So let's go ahead and do and test this route out. So this route is located in division, and then when we try to navigate to division, we have route not found. That's because we have and we are expected the to provide certain path parameters. So in this case, I'll provide 20, and I also provide 10 as this path parameters. And I think we're having something else. Let's go back to our route and let's say that we're having the expected result. I think, let's see, division, let's confirm this. We're having information concerning division. Where is that route coming from? About info, you got to be joking. All right, let's think our route may be conflicting with certain things. So let's be sure that we are having what we should be having. Let's be sure that we are having what we should be having. So first of all, I will remove this dependency, this global dependency just right here. And let's go back and let's see, be sure that we're having exactly what we should be having. So that hasn't just worked for us. So probably just search for about info, I think. Let's be sure that we're not conflicting routes here. So about info, let's see. We happen not to have any about info. Should probably delete this now. All right, so let's try this again. This time, let me specify ports just to be sure that you're not having port conflict at some point. 7070 here. Right, so let's go back and let's try it again. So I'll change my ports to from port 8000 to port 7070. And yeah, basically, you have the same thing. You guys will be ready. Okay, let's see. Let's see. I'm signing where? All right, let's see what is happening here. Right, to end the problem. So let's be sure. Oh, okay. Let's also be sure that we're having everything up and running. Okay, so I think we have a route somewhere that is conflicting with our division route. And I will do well to look at that, but I don't think we have any division route at some point. I'm not sure. Right, let's just continue. So that is working for us. All right, so we could see that well, in this case, what actually happened? The route actually went through, right? The route actually went through. So we were able to carry out the division of the first part parameter by the second part parameter. But a situation will happen where we do what, where we specify zero, which we've already seen this instance before back then where we were dealing with based on Python. And then when we hit on enter, we have a problem. This problem is called internal server error. It means that at some point in your route handler, that there's a line of code, right, that caused the route handler to break the application. But then we can also navigate to other applications and it will also to other routes and it will work. But then once the request is being made to this route and then the second path parameter is zero, the application tends to do what to break, which in this case we do not want this. We do not want this. And yes, we can do what we can do a try and accept here, right? We can do try and accept, try, and then we do what we accept. But then when we are accepting, we intend to do what? To we intend to send back a HTTP response, which we could also send another return here saying that we have an error, okay, an error, saying probably cannot divide this. Should I say second path parameter? The second path parameter should be should not be rather be zero. It should not be zero. And at some point, this would actually make sense, right? This would actually make sense. But then you can see that if we go back to our terminal, we see that that we have a status code of 200. I mean that the request was successful, and this can cause a complication between you, the back end developer, and your front end engineers, right? Because the front end engineers will be working with your response code, right? Because if this was to throw an error, then I'm expecting a response code, right, pertaining to an error, right? To let me know that request that I made, that there is an error. Then I can then further go ahead to check what is the error. But then in this situation now, we are having an error here, right? Saying that the second path parameter should be zero. But at the same time, I'm also having a a success response code, and it's conflicting, right? It's conflicting. So in this case, it will be proper to do what, to raise the exception, right? Rather than doing what, um, returning a, a JSON dictionary like this, right? You don't want to do that. Okay, you do not want to do that. So in this case, to raise the exception would be more preferable or more recommended than doing what than simply returning a message like this, than simply returning what, a message like this. So in that case, we can do what, we can have we can simply use the HTTP exception module to do what, to raise these exceptions. And this exception module is located in the same directory where you have your fast API. So we quickly update that, and then we should be up and running. So I'll simply go to where I have my fast API importation. Where I have my fast API importation, and I would simply, in this same direction here, so I will simply do what? I will simply bring in HTTP exceptions. HTTP exceptions. So you want to use what? You want to use this model to do what? To raise your exception or to handle your error, because that exception there, right, gives you the ability to do what, to specify a response code, which we'll talk about in shortly. We'll talk about response code shortly. So in that case, we'll come back here and I'll simply just comment on this man. I'll comment on this, okay, and then I'll now use a keyword called raise. So Python has a keyword called raise, and now what follows is what is the exception. Is the exception, and in this case, what we want to do raise is HTTP exception. And then within these exceptions, this is a function. Now you can do what, this function has a lot of parameters that you can carry. You can carry parameters like status code, right? Like status code and detail and any other thing. So in that case, I will simply come here and then I'll specify what status code. So from from what we've seen here, from the hints, from the time hints that we've seen here, you can see that what that we are expecting what a status code, and we also have what a detail. This detail can be of any type, but then your status code here, right, must be an integer, and then you can also go ahead to have headers, and at the same time this HTTP response can also be empty as it is, and there is no problem, But then you don't want to raise an HTTP response, an HTTP exception rather, and not do what, and not pass the detail of the problem of the error that you are actually encountering. So one of the things that we can pass is what we call status code. Now status code are basically numerical numbers. They are basically numerical numbers. Excuse me. They are basically numerical numbers that actually indicate the outcome of a specific request. So we have a lot of them that range from 200 all the way to 500, right? That these codes are quite much. So they start from 200 and they span down to 500, and they span down to 500. And let me just break this down before we come back there. For that, let me put what we have there. So between the range of 200, between the range of 200, 200 actually between the range of 200 we have 201, 200, which we've already seen here. I think in our command line we've already seen the status code of 200. And what 200 actually signify is that a request is actually what successful. We also have 201 and 204, right? Now these codes are quite much. These codes are much. So if in your spare time you can actually look them up. So, but I'll talk about the basics, and the ones that we've seen in our day-to-day lives, mostly. And I believe that we've also seen 4.1. Sorry, 4.4, not found. Probably when you try to visit a route and then that specific page is no longer available, you see 4.4. 4.4, it actually signify that specific page is no longer available. And you may also see 201. You may also see 201. 201. 201 actually stands for created. So you mostly see 201 when you've made a post content. You as the end user, you likely not see that code. But if in a software that you're working with a front end engineer, once a post is being submitted to be created, the front end engineer is expecting a 201 code to signify that specific post or that specific information has been created or has been added to the database successfully. So all this code has their meaning, and the front end engineers work with them a lot. That's why when raising a problem or when you intend to communicate a problem, it is recommended that you raise an exception with the appropriate response code. Sorry, with the appropriate status code, and then followed by the details of the problem. So in this situation here, in this situation here, I may choose to have a status code of 422. 422 actually means that we were not able to do what to process a specific entity, right? The entity can be anything, right? Can be anything. So and then for the front end guys to actually know of or what we're not able to do what to process, we have to do what we have to go ahead and pass the detail of this problem. That's where you have to come here and provide another parameter for detail. And this detail is basically could be a number, it could be integer, it could be a Boolean value, it could be a string value. But most of the time, it's usually what a string value that contains information pertaining to what causes the problem. So that's where you want to do what to come back here and provide what your details of the situation, right? So That way, your front end engineer or whoever you're working with, once the person sees the 42 code, he knows that what that probably that what had that what was sent in was not able to be what to be processed. And given with the details of this problem, the person can do what can go ahead to find solution to what to the problem by simply not doing what not specifying zero as the second parameter. Right, so let's go back and let's try this out and let's see if that actually works as expected. So once again, I'll make sure that I'll put 10 here as the expected output, and then we have the expected result. Let's go ahead and let's put 0 here, and we also have we have the same problem. We have the same issue, but then what with different status code. Now we have what the appropriate status code saying what unprocessed entity, right? Do we understand? Do we understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So basically, that is what you basically want to do, or to be doing when you intend to do what to communicate errors with whoever we are working with. You don't want to return a message like this, right? Because if you return a message like that, then we end up having a detail of a particular error, but then having a different status code. And like I said, this status code are basically numerical values that reference or that tells the outcome of a specific request. And I also said that this code range from 200 to 500, and they are unique in numbers, right? These numbers are quite unique. Just because I said that they range from 200 to 500 does not mean that we have over 300 status code. No, there are status code that is generally understood by every developers, right? So I don't think that there's any developer that understands 230. If I see the code 230, even myself, I'll be surprised. I'll be like, what is going on here? Right. So I'm basically saying that these numbers start from 200 to about 500, but it doesn't mean that it starts from 200 to all the way to 299, or 200 from 200 to 500. That's 300 status code, right? They are unique. They are unique in nature. So and I know a couple of them offhand. So when I just see them, I just know, right? I know a couple of them offhand. So when I see them, I just know for the range of 200, I know that there's 200, of course, and I also know that there's 201 and there's 204. I'm sure of 204. So 204 basically means that no content. So it means that the response was successful, right? Sorry, the request was made successful, but the server sent nothing. So nothing was sent. So basically, the server has processed this response and probably was unable to do what to send back a response or send back a feedback. That is 204. I think that's all I know for 200. So you guys, in your spare time, you can do what you can actually actually look up what this response codes. Then for 300, I know of 301. I know of 301. So 301 is basically that means that a specific resource has been moved permanently. It means that don't bother coming again to that route. You can never find that resource there again. So it means that probably there was a resource there, but at some point that resource was moved out from that route, probably to another route. And then we're not thinking that was that. Not like that. It's quite different from 404. 404 means that it's not found. It's that a specific route or a specific content, a specific route, rather, is not found, or a specific content is not found. Okay, but 301 means that means that there was something there. That route is still active, but then what you're looking for in that particular route is no longer there permanently. Right, that's what 301 means there, and you have the rest of them like 302 and the rest of them. 302 is the opposite of 301, found 302. I think all that I know for 300, and then there's 400, and then there is 500, right? So basically, you want to be doing this rather than doing what using the return keyword. you want to be using what the res exception, and then you do what you specify these two parameters, the status code alongside what with the detail of the problem. That way, we do what we get the appropriate response in status code alongside what with the appropriate error message, not the other way around, where we get what the appropriate message but then the wrong response code. Do we understand? Any question? Any question? Any question? No question. No question. All right. So, like I said, we have about 2 weeks, and then we should be done with teaching. So hopefully by next week we should wrap up. Next 2 weeks we should wrap up teaching. So we have like 4 more classes, and we should be done with teaching, and you should be able to know what to function effectively in your team. And we already know the rules. Function effectively in your team. Don't just go down and stay there. Function effectively. Don't be like backbenchers. Just stay at the back. Just be watching. Yes, yes, I know that will be dealing with mostly back end development, right, with fast API, but doesn't mean that you should start at the back, right? And keep staying there permanently. Once in a while, come to the front, right, and also function effectively in your team. So, like I said, our classes will tend to be shorter. Like for today's class, we're done. We're basically done for today's class. So simply just put a stop to the recording.